So starting off, let's start with W-2 right here. A W-2 is a tax form that people will get, and what you need to do is know exactly where to input it. And the hard part is like there's a lot of information on the W-2, so we have to make sure that you are entering everything that's necessary for it to be correct. So W-2 is going to look like this. It's going to look something like this. I want to provide 3 different samples for you to work on. Now, W-2s can range from being very basic and easy to something that's more complex, meaning there's more information that we need to enter. And I'll start with the basic one. With the basic one, what you're going to do is see a W-2 that looks like this. And what you notice is that within the W-2, you'll see 4 of the same ones. Usually there's gonna be 4 of the same ones, and they're all the same. It's just the way the form is, they always give you 4 copies, so we only need to use 1 of the 4. So let me zoom in real quick so you can see exactly what we're looking at. So we'll just use this section right here. We'll only go through this right here. So what you want to do is, when you go back to the tax guide, we have the W-2, we know the W-2. Now, where do we enter it inside Lacerte tax program? And that's on page 10. Okay, so if you look on the Lacerte program, you go through details after you click on the client name, and you'll see a table of contents right here. What you could do is just directly click on page 10 right here on this button right here, or you could actually go to income and also go to this drop down where it's 10 as well. So I'm just going to click it on here, and it goes to this page where we start entering in all the important information. And for this case, because we don't have a previous W-2 being carried over, we'll have to enter in everything such as the employer name, the ID number, and the address. So let's start with this. We find the employer name right here. So what we're going to do is just enter that in first, right? So this is Trinet HR 3 Incorporated. And sometimes you'll see that there's a drop down right here that will have it because it came from a previous entry. So if that's the case, you could use a drop down as long as it matches the same. Now, what I like to do is just follow the board right here, follow this part right here. And what we're going to do is, okay, they're going to ask for employer ID number, which you will find is right here. And the employer ID number is always going to have 2 digits, such as right here, 48, a dash, and then 1304650. So that's the employer ID number. So there's usually 2 digits, a dash, and then 7 more numbers after that. So the way I like to see is like there's a 2 digits and a dash, that's usually the employer ID number. Okay, so enter that in, and then sometimes it'll populate up the state ID as well. So there's 2 IDs. There's the federal ID, which is right here, and there's a state ID, which is down here. And if it matches, then perfect. So in this case, it does match, it populated by itself, then we could just use that one. If it doesn't populate, then you just have to enter this section in yourself. So the next thing we're going to do is the address. In this case, the address auto-populated, but if it doesn't auto-populate and it's a blank, we just have to enter it in yourself, and you find the address right here. Okay, the only thing missing is Suite 600. That it says it right here, so Suite 600. So I'm just going to put 600 right there. Okay, now next we scroll down. Now you see all these boxes with these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to match and coincide with the actual W-2. For example, right here is box 1, and then box 2, and then box 3, and then box 4, right? So we're just going to follow this. We're going to go one by one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until we hit all single boxes. Okay, so box 1 here shows right here. So it shows 300, 5225. Okay, perfect. Now box 2 is 57994. Now box 3 is 147,000, so that matches. And box 3, 4, 5, and 6, you'll notice that it's in black. And usually when it's in black, that means it's auto-populating and it's an auto calculation. And we just have to make sure that their calculation is actually correct. So 147,000 is correct. 9114 does match with box 4 here. 335225, that matches, and 6078. Perfect. So we did box 6. Now box 7, let's look at box 7. Box 7 here is blank. So that means 0. So we'll just leave it blank. Same with box 8. And then 9 has nothing. And box 10 doesn't have anything. Okay. Then the next thing I see is box actually 12 has something. So 12A is right here. And what you're going to do is you see this code DD. There will be different codes. So there could be A, there could be D, there could be W. We just have to make sure we put the right code in. So what you do is type in DD and it'll auto populate. But you could also just do a drop down if you want to see all the different codes and just match it that way. But it's faster if you just type it in DD, and then we're going to type in the amount 31884. Perfect. Okay. So nothing else in box 12D. Nothing in 13. So box 13, you will usually have an X on it if there is one of those things. 14 has nothing. So now let's go to 15. 15 is the California ID number. And the way you want to check this at the very top right here. And that matches. Now let's go to box 16. Okay. 16 is, you scroll down, nothing in 13 or 14. Okay, now we're at 16 right here. It says state wages if different. Remember, state wages if different. And if different means that does box 16 match with box 1? If they match, then that means we don't enter anything in. We can just leave it blank. But if it doesn't match, then we have to enter in whatever shows in box 16. In this case, it matches, so we'll just leave it the way it is. We'll just leave it blank. And then next one, let's go box 17. Box 17 shows state income tax of 26290. So we just enter that in here, 26290. Now, local wages right here, box 18 and 19, we usually leave this blank. And you'll see it in this W2, it shows something here, but it's actually incorrect. And it's incorrect because when it comes to this something called SDI or CASDI, this actually should be inputted in box 14. But sometimes W2s don't put it into the right spot. So we have to be aware of that. So we're not going to copy this at all. We're not going to use 18, 19, or 20 in this case. In these boxes right here. Instead, we're going to put it back into box 14 where it should be. So we're going to scroll up to box 14, which is right here. And we're going to look for SDI. SDI, State Disability Insurance. That's what SDI stands for. And we're just going to enter in this number right here, 1602. 1602. And this is important to notate that we don't blindly just enter the numbers in this section the way it shows, because it's actually incorrect. If you did it this way, it would be an incorrect tax return. So we have to make sure that when it comes to SDI or something else called VDI, that we input it into the right spot. If there's something called VDI, it's entered in down here instead. Okay, and we're going to go through more examples that shows this. But now we went through the whole W2. I think we went through everything. So we have to go to the forms, and the way you go to the forms is you click forms right here, and then down here are all the different pages that we have to refer to. In this case, if you look at W2 10, page 10 is what we entered in. Now on the tax return, this section right here, we have to go to 1040 line 1, which is right here. So 335225, which I believe does match this. Yeah, perfect. But also on the worksheet, and the worksheet will provide more details that we need to make sure that we're matching everything. So if you click down here on under worksheet, you'll see that in this section right here, this is where you're going to check exactly if you put it in correctly, right? So if we look at the tax form right here, what I like to do is look at this page right here and make sure I see it on the W2. So this number shows 335225. I see it there. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check it off. And when I see it checked, that means that I know that I already checked for it on the W2 to make sure it's correct, and I can move on to the next thing. And this helps your manager know that you actually checked it as well, because if they see a green mark, that means you actively checked it already. The next number is 57994 under federal withholding. So this is the federal withholding box, box 2, and 57994. Perfect. FICA is going to be box 4. So that's 9114. Box 4 is right here, 9114. That matches. Perfect. Medicare is 6078. Perfect. That matches right there. And state withholding is 26290, which is down here. 26290, box 17. Okay. And SDI 1602. 1602 is right here. That should have been in box 14, but it was marked wrong on the W-2 here. So now we checked everything. When it comes to checking on the worksheet right here, on this page right here, all you have to do is just make sure you're checking box 1, 2, 4, 6, and 17. That's it. As long as you check those boxes and it matches here, then you have most of it correct, and that's when we are good to go. So now let's move on to the second W-2, just to make sure that we understand how it works. The second W-2 is this one right here, and it's from Apple. And let me zoom in real quick. You remember, there's going to be 4 of the same copies. We just got to use one. So I'm just going to zoom in and use this one right here. Okay, so the second one, now let's say this is for the spouse, right? Meaning that the wife also has a W-2. We just got to make sure we mark this as spouse. It's very important that we distinguish which W-2 goes to where. So does it belong to the husband or does it belong to the spouse? If it belongs to the spouse, we have to make sure we click this, because if we don't click it, it's going to mess up the tax return. Okay, so now we just go through the same prompts. You write down the company name. This is Apple Inc. And if you see it drop down, you can do that as well. In this case, I'm just going to type in Apple Inc. And then we're going to go to this section now, which is employer ID number. And you can see it there on 942404110. Okay, perfect. State ID number is going to be right here in box 15. So 2515456. Okay, perfect. And then you'll notice the state right here is California. You just got to make sure it shows California in box 15 as well. If there's another state, you could add it in right here and just put in the ID number there. Okay, so now we're going to go through box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, everything in this W-2. And we're just going to go in order. So box 1 right here, 411688. Box 2 is 89675. Box 3 is 147, that matches. 914, that matches. 411. So you see, this one is different. The W-2 right here in box 5 shows 414208, but this doesn't match right here. This shows 411. So we're going to change this to 414208. And then when we press enter or tab, it should change automatically to the right number, which is box 6, 9344. So we just want to make sure that matches. Perfect. Now let's look in box 10 and 11. Is there anything here? 10 and 11 doesn't have anything. Box 12 actually has a lot of things. So let's enter that in one by one. So we're going to go C, 497. The next one is going to be D, is going to be 2520. Next one is AA. Perfect. And then that's going to be 17980. And 12D is going to be DD. And this is going to be 18932. Perfect. Okay. Now we did 12, 13. So you see this little check or X right here? We have to mark that on the tax return. So let's go down to 13, which is right here. And there's retirement plan that's checked off. So we're just going to check that box off to match what shows on box 13 right here. Okay, now let's go to 14. 14 has a couple different things. There's VDI, just what I explained earlier, and there's RSU. So VDI is right here, voluntary plan disability insurance withheld. So V for voluntary. If you see one that says SDI, that's for state. So for V, we're going to put it here, 1602. And then right here, this is informational. So it's really nothing that goes into any of these right here. So we're just going to put it in others, and we're just going to label the description RSU as well, and enter in 140855. Okay. Okay, so 14. Now let's go to 15. Okay, 15 is going to be California, nothing there. 16, state wages and tips. Remember, if different, we just got to make sure if we see the word if different, and if different from box 1. So box 1 and box 16 are actually the same. So we don't need to enter it in. We're just going to leave it blank. Only if it's the same is when we leave it blank. If it's a different amount, we'll enter the amount that's shown in box 16. Now, box 17 is 39726. Okay. And 18, 19, 20 doesn't have anything. Perfect. So we are done with this one. Oh, this, I just noticed that this is bad. Okay, perfect. Let's enter in one more W2, okay? And the way you're gonna enter in one more W2 is by clicking add, and you'll see a third one pop up. Now let's enter in this one right here. It's General Motors, right? And let's just say this is for the spouse again, and we're just gonna make sure that we click the box correctly. So let me zoom in so we know exactly what we're working at with. Okay, so in this W2, we're gonna enter in General Motors. Oh, I spelled it wrong. General Motors. And I see the pop down menu, so I'm just going to use that just to make it quick. Like we said, this is for the spouse, so let's click on the spouse. And again, we're just going to make sure everything matches 27038. Okay, that matches, and 39830940. Perfect. General Motors, the address is matching, so we are good. So now, again, go through all the numbered boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to go through all of them. Okay, so 1 is 89283, 16422. So as you can see in box 3, it doesn't match with what was auto populated by Lacerte. So let's change that. That's going to be 91991. And once I click this, you see it says 5536, which doesn't match here. But in here, once I click tab or enter, it will automatically adjust it to the right amount, 5703. If it still doesn't adjust it correctly, just manually enter it in. Now this one, let's see, 91991, that matches, and that matches, so that's good. Okay, so let's go through 7, 8, 9, 10 doesn't have anything. 12 does have something, so let's go to D. 2708. W is 3650. Okay. 13 does have a box checked right here under retirement plan, so let's go to that. 14 has California SDI, so we see SDI. We're going to enter it in here as 1052. 15, 16. Okay, 16. Let's see. 16, if different, 92932 here, and box 1 shows 89282. So it is different. So we're going to have to write in the amount that shows in box 16, 92933. And then state income tax is 7003. Perfect. So now that everything's entered, we have to make sure that it flows to the tax return correctly. And using this as your guide, the inputting guide, the W-2 goes on page 10 of Lacerte, which we did. This is page 10. And then we go look for the tax form that it goes on under. So this is 1040 line 1A and worksheet. So what I'd like to do is just kind of look at this total right here, 836196. If I go to 1A, it goes 836196. So that matches perfectly. And then let's go to the worksheet. So with the worksheet, it's going to split up between taxpayer and spouse. And we have to make sure that we know which one is taxpayer and which one is spouse. So the last two that we entered, Apple and General Motors, we know that was for the spouse. So it's under the right person. So that's good. Now let's just check it over. We're just going to make sure we're going to only check box 1, 2, 4, 6, and 17. Okay, so 411688, that matches. 89675, that matches box 2. 9114, that matches box 4. This matches box 6. And 39726, perfect. And this one, they have VDI right here. It says it shows a V, so that won't show in here because this is for SDI. So that's okay that if it's blank. Perfect. Now let's go to General Motors. We're gonna do the same thing. 89283 matches. 16,422. 5703 matches. 1334. 7003 matches. 1052 matches. Perfect. So now we matched everything. We checked everything off. We know it flowed through the tax return correctly, and that's how you enter a W-2.